On Saturday the 20th of April in 2019, a 29-year-old man named Michael McClain made plans to spend the evening with friends at a popular nightclub in Nashua, New Hampshire, but what started as a normal night of drinks and dancing would soon spiral into something much darker. In the early hours of the morning, after an altercation broke out in the parking lot, Michael became separated from his friends, and moments later he would make a frantic phone call to his boss, claiming that he was being chased, a phone call that would be the last known contact he ever made. At first, those close to Michael assumed he would turn up after cooling off from the night's chaos, but as the hours turned into days, and he failed to return home or reach out to anyone, the sense of unease escalated. But even more disturbingly, his disappearance would occur just weeks after two other individuals also mysteriously vanished from the same area, and yet authorities continued to insist that no foul play had occurred. However, after 6 years of investigation in the town of Nashua, the case still remains unsolved, leaving his family understandably heartbroken as they are only left to wonder what really happened to Michael McClain, and more importantly, who could be responsible. Michael Anthony McClain was born on the 5th of October in 1989 in the city of Stamford, Connecticut, to a close-knit family who described him as a loving, charismatic and driven young man. Michael, often affectionately nicknamed Mike by those who knew him, grew up with a strong moral compass, a bright smile and a natural ability to connect with anyone he met. From an early age, he was known to be both thoughtful and ambitious, as after graduating from high school in 2008, he made the bold decision to move north to New Hampshire, where he sought out new opportunities and enrolled at Hampshire College. It was here that he dedicated himself to his studies, eventually earning a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a field he had long admired given his passion for helping others and making a difference in the community. Following graduation, Michael settled in the historic city of Manchester, New Hampshire, where he shared an apartment with friends, and he went on to work for Easter Seals, a non-profit organisation committed to supporting veterans, as well as individuals with disabilities, autistic children and senior citizens. According to his co-workers, Michael found deep fulfillment in his work, and his compassion for the vulnerable only grew stronger over time. In his personal life, Michael was just as vibrant. He loved music, enjoyed spending time with friends, and was known for his sharp sense of humour and occasional mischievous streak. Friends described him as someone who could light up a room, but was also fiercely loyal and protective over the people he cared about. However, despite having so many positive aspects to his life, there were challenges Michael faced quietly. Being a black man in a predominantly white state meant he sometimes felt like an outsider, even though he rarely spoke openly about it. His family and friends often sensed he was cautious in unfamiliar environments, especially at night, but he remained hopeful and determined to build a good life for himself, and it was this same optimistic spirit that guided Michael on that fateful night, when he decided to join friends for a casual night out in the nearby city of Nashua, only to seemingly vanish without a trace. On Saturday the 20th of April, the 29-year-old man had been spending the evening out with his friends at a popular nightclub called the Tropical Lounge. At first, everything seemed normal, as they had been spending the night drinking, dancing and having fun, enjoying the small but lively nightlife scene that Nashua had to offer. However, sometime after the club closed in the early hours of Sunday morning, an altercation broke out in the parking lot involving several women. It was initially believed that Michael had somehow gotten involved to try and break it up, but this was never confirmed. But either way, what we do know for sure is that during the confusion, Michael became separated from his friends. When they realised he was missing, they waited around for approximately 45 minutes, searching for him and trying to call his phone. But to their surprise, he never answered. So, assuming he had either found his own way home or gotten a ride, his friends reluctantly decided to head back to the neighbouring town of Manchester around 3 AM. However, unbeknownst to the group, while they were travelling back, Michael was still alone in downtown Nashua, as in the hours following the altercation, he was captured on several surveillance cameras wandering near the Merrimack River, visiting a McDonald's restaurant and eventually appearing inside the parking garage of a nearby apartment complex. But despite the footage seeming to show Michael in a relatively normal state, at approximately 3:30 AM he was then captured exiting the apartment complex alone, and from that point on, he was never seen again. But to make this already troubling situation even more concerning, It would later be revealed that an unsettling phone call was made by Michael to his boss around 2 AM, in which he frantically claimed that people were chasing him and that he was in danger. Shortly after, he also sent a series of alarming texts to a neighbour, including a cryptic message referencing Eldridge Street, a location near the club. However, despite these clear warning signs, those who knew Michael tried to stay hopeful, as it wasn't unusual for him to crash with friends after a night out, and after all, perhaps he had simply needed some time to cool off after the night's chaos. But as the hours continued to pass by, with Michael failing to show up for work or contact his family for the Easter holidays, the worry quickly evolved into a panic. So, realising that something was very wrong, Michael's loved ones decided that they had no other option but to officially report him as missing to the Nashua Police Department. On Monday the 22nd of April, just one day after Michael McClain was last seen, the Nashua Police Department officially opened a missing person investigation following a report from his concerned family. According to those closest to Michael, it was completely out of character for him to disappear without contacting anyone, especially with upcoming family events like Easter and his sister's birthday, occasions he would never willingly miss. They explained how Michael was a reliable and caring individual, someone who always kept in touch with loved ones, even during busy periods. Despite this, however, early on in the investigation, authorities appeared to downplay the severity of the case, suggesting that perhaps Michael had simply wandered off after a night of heavy drinking. Given the lack of immediate signs of foul play, and considering Michael was an adult legally capable of leaving on his own, the investigation initially moved at a slow and cautious pace. However, after days passed with no activity on Michael's bank accounts, social media or phone, investigators began to take the case more seriously. So, in an effort to step up the investigation, the police began reviewing surveillance footage from downtown Nashua, where Michael was apparently last seen, and it wouldn't be too long before hope was reignited when investigators uncovered a new piece of vital information. On Thursday the 2nd of May, almost 2 weeks after Michael's disappearance, his family received a sudden moment of optimism when investigators revealed that they had uncovered a surprising piece of evidence that could shift the entire direction of the case. While reviewing security footage from businesses in downtown Nashua, detectives were able to track Michael's movements from the night he was last seen at the Tropical Lounge nightclub. This footage revealed Michael leaving the club, walking alone and passing through the downtown area. He was seen at a McDonald's around 2 AM, and later on he was spotted in the parking garage of the Riverfront Landing apartment complex near the Merrimack River. The footage showed Michael exiting the garage at 3:30 AM, an hour and a half after the altercation at the club, and that was the last time anyone saw him. But despite this major discovery, the police were still unable to find any trace of Michael's whereabouts, and as days went by, his family's concerns intensified. They couldn't understand why he wouldn't be in contact, as it was out of character for him to disappear without any communication. Also, worrying theories began to emerge that Michael may have fallen into the Merrimack River, as it was flowing rapidly at the time due to snowmelt. However, a thorough search of the water failed to yield any results. Dive teams, sonar scans, and assistance from Massachusetts authorities were brought in, but no sign of Michael was found in the river. So, by this point, investigators were still exploring multiple theories, including the possibility of foul play, even though no physical evidence suggested that he had been harmed, and they had not identified any suspects either. But in addition to the river search, Michael's family began their own efforts to find him, circulating information about his disappearance on social media, and urging the public to come forward with any information. However, despite the significant efforts of everybody involved, to this day, there have been no breakthroughs in the case, and therefore, Michael McClain's disappearance remains unsolved, as his family continues to hold on to the belief that the circumstances surrounding his case will eventually come to light. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. But thanks to the perseverance of Michael's family, his case continues to stay active in the public eye, with help from the Black and Missing Foundation, who consistently post the details of his case as often as possible to ensure that he is not forgotten. So with this in mind, we have to stay positive that it will only be a matter of time before the truth is revealed, providing Michael's family with the answers they deserve, and maybe even leading them to reunite with their loved one against all odds. However, given that Michael McClain has now been missing for over 6 years, despite the devoted efforts of everybody involved in his case, I can't help but feel that the likelihood of his safe return is only growing weaker as time passes. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, then you will likely know that at this point in the video, I usually begin to rattle off a few theories about what could have happened to the missing person, in an attempt to bring more attention to the case. But I do understand that these theories can be distressing to hear, especially if you are close to the victim, so I will try my best to be as respectful as possible by refraining from going into any painful details. So with this in mind, one theory that's been mentioned by those who are following the case is the possibility that his fate was the result of a tragic accident. Some believe that rather than foul play being involved, Michael may have found himself in a dangerous situation, and through a series of unfortunate events, accidentally lost his life. It's known that Michael was last seen in the area of the Tropical Lounge, a spot that has seen its fair share of altercations and chaos. After spending time at the club, it's possible that Michael, after a night of drinking, wandered into a bad situation. Whether he was walking home or leaving the bar, the combination of alcohol and fatigue could have impaired his judgment, leading him to make risky decisions. One possibility that has been suggested is that Michael may have accidentally fallen into the Merrimack River. The area around the club has a few places where a person could easily slip and fall, especially if they were disoriented or intoxicated. If this is the case, Michael could have drowned, with no one around to hear him or come to his aid in time. Now, this theory, while tragic, does align with the absence of any witnesses or substantial leads regarding foul play, and if Michael had been hurt in a way that left him unable to seek help or communicate, his body may have been hidden or washed away, making it harder for investigators to track his last movements. The lack of social media activity or any communication with his family or friends after he went missing only deepens the mystery and certainly would back up the idea that Michael simply fell into a body of water before eventually losing his life. But the fact remains that there is no solid proof that these events occurred, and even if we entertain the theory that Michael could have fallen into the Merrimack River, there is still every chance that somebody else could have been responsible. So rather than accepting the explanation that this story was nothing more than a tragic accident, is it possible that Michael's death could have been the result of intentional foul play? Well, according to some witnesses, Michael was seen leaving the club after an altercation, though there's no confirmed evidence about the nature of this conflict. It is theorised that he may have had a confrontation with someone inside the club, which escalated into something much darker. Rumours have also circulated that the individual Michael was arguing with, a man who was allegedly seen with him in the hours before he vanished, may have played a role in his disappearance. Some have speculated that this person, possibly under the influence of alcohol, may have coerced or forced Michael into the water. According to one unconfirmed source, it was suggested that after accidentally taking his life, Michael's body may have been disposed of in the Merrimack River, which was rapidly flowing at the time due to snowmelt. However, a point which seems to combat this theory is that despite extensive searches in the river, a body was never found. So either the river was running so rapidly that Michael's body was transported out of the search parameters, or his body may have been disposed of elsewhere. But despite this harrowing theory being considered by the police, to this day there have been no substantial leads in identifying the individual Michael had allegedly been arguing with, nor has any solid evidence emerged to prove that any foul play took place. So it's no surprise that this lack of progress has raised concerns among Michael's family, as they begin to question the reliability of the police force responsible for the investigation, and whether or not they are taking the case as seriously as they should be. However, to take these statements a bit further, it has also been voiced by the community that have been following Michael's case online that the reason for this lack of progress in the investigation could be the result of racial discrimination. And given the shocking demographics of Nashua, it's not too hard to see why. Another theory that has been gaining traction in recent months is the idea that Nashua could be a sundown town, due to its complex history and lack of racial diversity, with only 2.4% of the population identifying as Black or African American. According to the US Census Bureau, around 71% of Nashua's population identify as white, with a significant amount of the remaining population being listed as Hispanic or white Hispanic. This means that Michael McClain, a 29-year-old black man, would have likely stood out, raising his profile as a potential victim to any locals with racist beliefs. Now, to properly understand this theory, we also need to consider the historical context, as while many towns across America have shifted to a more diverse way of thinking in recent years, there are still countless examples of towns which continue to harbour remnants of racism. So with this in mind, the lack of substantial information since Michael's disappearance has led some people to wonder if it could be linked to the racial tension that still exists in certain parts of Nashua, and that his presence in the area at night, especially in places that could be considered less than welcoming, may have led to an unfortunate encounter. Supporters of this theory argue that during his walk home, Michael could have found himself in an unsafe area after dark, and if the rumours are true, which claim Nashua still retains some aspects of its controversial past, it could have been a factor in his disappearance. However, before I get too carried away, I must make it clear that so far there is no physical evidence linking the idea of foul play to Michael's case, so we may never know if racism really did play a role in his disappearance. But the theory still raises important questions about the extent to which these deep-rooted societal issues might still influence what happens behind closed doors. Regardless, what we can be sure of is that the people of Nashua, and especially Michael's family, deserve answers. If there are still lingering racial biases that prevent a full investigation into his case, that's something the public along with law enforcement must address in order to ensure that Michael's case doesn't become just another story left unsolved. Anyway, on that note, I think I'll leave this video here. But as always, if you have any other theories of your own which you think may help explain what really happened to Michael McClain, please leave your ideas in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. But until next time, thank you so much for watching and make sure to subscribe to the channel for updates on these stories. Also, if you found this video interesting, feel free to check out the playlist on screen now, which covers the many other cases of young men who continue to disappear across America, never to be seen alive again.